Joined here with my friend Michael. His in-game name is Happily Pancakes. Michael, how are you doing, buddy?
Hey, what's up? I'm doing pretty good.
I just wanted to welcome you guys to the first edition of Bot Chatter. In this series, we're going to be talking roughly about the pro scene and some changes that have been made to CSGO recently. And we will be ending each segment with a betting tip. So we'll be going over upcoming games and we'll be giving our outlook and our predictions on each team. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. Today was a really good day for us to start, Michael, because DreamHack Stockholm just finished up yesterday, and there's some pretty interesting stuff that happened yesterday. I was very caught off guard with who was even in the finals, much less who won that game.
Oh man,
but
that tournament was crazy.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
One of the best tournaments by far.
Yeah, it was definitely some of the most fun I've had watching CSGO over the past couple months. You had a lot of overtime games, especially. Like a lot of overtime games, especially in the group stages as well.
Right, and then what was it, 75, 80,000 viewers for the final?
Yeah.
Huge final.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the best CS:GO tournaments I've seen in a while, especially since ESL won Cologne, which I know didn't end too far.
Right.
Too far back, or has been relatively recently, but DreamHack Stockholm was definitely a tournament to watch if you missed it. All the VODs are going up, so if you have time, definitely check out some of those games. Pretty great games all around.
Yeah, guys, if you are interested in something like that, I will leave a link for you in the description section below to a website called hltv.org, where you can go and pick up some demos of recently played games, and they have demos of team versus teams, like what a caster would show you, and also they would have demos from a perspective. So if you wanted to watch Fnatic play, you could watch JW's perspective only and just have that period. So I'll leave that in the description section below if that is something that would interest you guys. So you go check out that and maybe pick some stuff up that the pros do. But Michael, I first want to talk about the group stages of Stockholm. Now, we had some pretty shocking stuff happen in the group stages. You had alternate go out 0-2, which I don't know if you caught the games or not. I didn't catch anything but the first game, which they played NIP2.
Right.
Which they lost, 16-8, which isn't terribly convincingly, because that's just you win a pistol round here, you get this round here that adds up to a couple more rounds beyond that. So that's not too convincing of a score to lose by 16-8. So that's a pretty good showing for them. And then they went on to play Titan and lose 12-16. So overall, I think alternate, they showed up pretty well, and they were the only team to actually have to qualify into this. The other 7 teams that took place in it were all invited. But overall, what would you, because alternate had some roster changes a couple months ago, and they're never a team that's really been on anybody's map. So what would you rank them as far as hey, I'm looking to bet, and they're going up against this team, what can I compare them to?
So as a pretty easy scaling system, I like to basically tier off a lot of the teams into as close as I can get to tier 1, tier 2 teams, where the tier 1 are going to be the best, the top 5 teams, top maybe even 10 teams at a time if they're all really close together. I would say alternate is maybe somewhere actually in the middle of that ground. So right around the level of, if you want to compare it to other teams, like Wizards or the now Overgaming, a couple of the other teams, I would say that they're comparable somewhat to Mouse Sports. If not, they're most likely the second best team out of Germany. They're very comparable to a lot of the US teams, things like Netcode Guides and Lunatic Esports. So we have, they're not a team that I expect to show up and win at any major tournaments, but they're always a contender to beat any realistically take down a top team in a best of 1. It's not going to happen often, but they are a decent underdog bet for a lot of the time.
Right. Okay.
what I want to talk about more so as an underdog team would be actually the other team that went out early on, which was Copenhagen Wolves.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've kept up with the development of Copenhagen Wolves or not, but Copenhagen Wolves is, they're basically a bunch of people from Denmark that were kind of left out after a series of roster changes. So like Dignitas took out or dropped a player called Cajun B, great offer for a player named AZ.
Right.
And from there you had a dissolvement of the previous 3D Max team, which was a Danish team, which
Correct.
the remainder of the teams, part of that team, which is Glaive and Pimp, who didn't get picked up, decided to join up with Cajun B and a couple other players. Kerrigan, who's previously I'd only known as someone who played substitute for Nip on a couple occasions.
Okay.
Who's actually a pretty good player, and a player named Nico, who if I remember correctly, was one of the better offers at the beginning of CS:GO.
Okay.
Who used to play for a couple different teams.
All right. So where would you put Copenhagen Wolves in alternate? Like, who would you rank to be higher? Because they both went 0-2 in the tournament and got booted out of group stages very early. So where would you pin them against if they were playing against each other? Who do you think you would have the edge?
So here's the weird thing about these team setups is that Copenhagen Wolves and Alternate are both have had reasonably similar accomplishments so far, which to me seems kind of bizarre, simply because I would expect Copenhagen Wolves to just be a better team.
Right.
Not necessarily going to give any crap to Alternate. They're obviously a very good team. They're all very good players. But we've seen the Copenhagen Wolf players play before, and players like Pimp, Cajun B, Nico, Kerrigan have all been really, really stellar performers, and Glaive is probably the best in-game leader at the moment in Denmark.
Okay.
In terms of strategy, potentially even in terms of skill, he's someone who I could easily say he could outmaneuver Fetish, could potentially outgame Fetish, who is the in-game leader of Dignitas, the other
Correct.
huge Danish in-game leader. But the only difference really being that Glaive doesn't make the huge plays that Fetish does.
Right.
But overall, Copenhagen Wolves should be a stronger team.
Okay.
But it feels like whenever they play, they don't necessarily play together well.
Okay.
Which may be a facet of them only being around for, 3 months now. They started on June, so that's 3 months.
Right.
So they've been together for about 3 months now, and it feels like they've gotten better. But I was expecting more from their play than what they've given us so far.
Okay. All right. And go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Especially considering that they have what really amounts to like 3 of just huge offers. Like Pimp, Nico, Cajun B have all been just huge offers. And on a lot of maps, I feel like having an additional op just randomly, not necessarily just maps like Dust 2 where double op is semi-standard at this point, with teams like Fnatic and Titan doing it, pretty much as their default.
Yeah.
But like double op on some maps, especially maps like honestly Nuke, can be a really scary map to have a double op on.
Right.
Just
right.
to catch people off guard, and they're already amazing at Nuke.
Right.
But I just expected them to do better than what they have done.
Right.
But this tournament in particular wasn't a low showing.
Okay. Yeah, because
At least in my case.
They played against Dignitas and 3D Max, which they lost both those games, and respectively those games were 16-14, 16-13. So those are very close games, and games like that just come down to if we won this one round, we would have forced them to a save, and then we would have taken the one after that. So a lot of the time, these close games are just decided by maybe hitting that one extra shot or getting that 1 or 2 extra frags that you need in that round in order to force your opponents into a sticky situation with their economy. Now, the next part that I do want to talk about is probably the most shocking part of the entire DreamHack Stockholm tournament, which was NIP, Ninjas in Pajamas, and Dignitas, both going out in the group stages, which was a very shocking thing to me, especially, and I'm sure to you as well.
Yeah, right. Because like I was talking about before, we have these tier one teams, like top five, top 10. Well, Dignitas and Nip are definitively in the top four. They have been like Dignitas has been top four since like January.
Right.
They've been playing phenomenally. They've gotten to the quarterfinals of every single tournament at least. They've been just crushing people. They've been playing super well. They always play super solidly, no matter like how much of a break it seems. They always just come out and play their tournament really well.
Right.
And like they have a bunch of huge guns on their team. Like AZ is famous for basically acing Nip twice in one map, and no one else has ever done that in the history of CS:GO. Like you don't ace a team with the two best players in the world.
Yeah.
Like twice in a map. That's
right.
unheard of. They have Dupree and Device, who are huge fraggers, huge playmakers, great players. Zipnix honestly will step up. Like this past tournament, he was playing like phenomenally. And for the past like 2 or 3 tournaments, he's been playing really well. So for Dignitas to go out in groups is like that's something you don't see. Because when I was looking at Group B, which is Fnatic, 3D Max, Dignitas, and Copenhagen Wolves.
Right.
I was really just going. I was just like, oh, Fnatic is going through. Dignitas is going through. One of them will be in first. One will be in second. It doesn't really matter. They're gonna crush 3D Max and Wolves and get through.
Right.
And they struggle to beat Copenhagen Wolves, which I understand because domestic matchups have a tendency to do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You practice against those guys all the time. You scrim them. They know your patterns. They know how you play. Some of them have played with you before. Like Cajun B was part of Dignitas until AZ got out. AZ used to play with Glaive and Pimp all the time because he was part of the original Reason in 3D Max.
Right.
So like I understand why that's such a tough game, and then losing to Fnatic, I obviously understand because Fnatic has been playing just stellar for like ever since ESL.
Yeah.
Ever since they really picked up Olafmeister and Crims off the XLGB/Team Global.
Right.
But for them to lose to 3D Max was like that like blew my mind. I didn't see that coming at all.
Right.
That was just unbelievable.
Right. And so let's talk about Nip now. I want what are your opinions on Nip with going out in the group stage in a tournament that's in their own backyard?
Right. So Nip is one of those teams where they like at the beginning of CS:GO they were the best. There was no one else. They were number 1 and everyone else was playing to get second place. They went 87-0 in tournament games. That's a whole new level of just dominance that is really never shown on any other scale. It hasn't been shown by a team before or since, really. Even as far back as like SK from 2003, I would argue wasn't as comparatively dominant at the time for such a long period.
Right.
And until really this year, they had never finished outside the top 4 at a tournament. Like until Gfinity, or until ESEA, and then later Gfinity, they had never finished outside the semifinals.
Yeah.
So for them to go out in the group stages for the first time is absolutely huge. Like that's something that doesn't happen. NIP doesn't lose in the group stages.
Right.
But what happened here it is kind of shocking, but what happened here is they played Team LDLC and they played Titan in their groups.
Correct.
And LDLC and Titan are both extremely good teams. LDLC and NIP have been going back and forth online. They're basically tied. Their most recent game, in fact, before this tournament, was a tie. They went 15-15 on cash, both sides getting 11-4. Titan and NIP have always been very close, and I don't know if you caught the Titan NIP game, but it all comes down to an insane clutch by Kenny S. That if you guys haven't seen that game, you need to see it. It's absolutely mind-blowing to watch happen, but it all came down to like 2 rounds, and it was still an excellent performance. But for them to go on to group stages, it has to be kind of concerning.
Right. Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. And yeah, Kenny S, I mean, whenever Kenny S does well, it always seems that Titan does really well. Kenny S is known for hitting those absolutely crazy op shots, which has earned him the title as one of the best oppers in the world at CS:GO. I mean, you can make a very good case for him to be number 1, and if he's not number 1, then on everybody's list, he's pretty much just number 2. So let's move on to the next shocking story. The Team 3D Max, which was actually just put together not too recently. They left the CS:GO scene back in, I believe it was March, and then they just fielded a team not too recently, and they put on a very impressive showing, beating Copenhagen Wolves 16-13, and then taking Dignitas into overtime, and then winning the overtime 19-17, which would allow them to progress out of the group stages and go on to the playoffs. Now, do you think this is just maybe like a one-time showing for 3D Max, or do you think this is maybe something that they're going to be able to build off of and keep the momentum going for a while?
Well, like I said before, I just assumed that Fnatic versus Dignitas would be the only game to watch for Group B, kind of foolishly, I guess, looking in hindsight. But I think that 3D Max has extreme potential. They are the former Encore squad, so they've been together for a long time and played for a long time.
Right.
But they never made anything huge happen with the Encore squad.
Right.
Like they never had any huge performances throughout their entire area or entire span of being Encore. So I'm a little bit hesitant to talk about it being, like, oh, this is 3D Max is now like the best, like they're obviously the best Finnish team, but I'm hesitant to call them, like tier 1, top team,
right,
best team, like, because they are a very good team and they've been playing together for a long time, and obviously being Dignitas is like a huge showing, so maybe this is like their turning point,
right?
And Karn, Disturbed, really all of their players played excellently the entire tournament.
Yeah.
And they obviously deserve to beat, like they beat Dignitas, they deserve recognition for that. But I'm gonna hesitate to say that they're gonna be, like the next top team. Like when they show up to the next huge tournament, which I think the next one they might show up to in the foreseeable future would be like DreamHack Winner, basically.
Right.
I wouldn't put my money on them having basically, that repeat performance to the semifinals, because DreamHack Winner is just a bigger tournament.
Right.
You're gonna have more than 2 groups. You're gonna have like, I think it's like, like 8 groups or something.
Yeah.
You're gonna have the quarterfinals. You're gonna have, or at least it's gonna be at least 4 groups. You're gonna have the quarterfinals. Like all the other big teams will be there. Every single top team will be there. So when you have groups that are going to be way more stacked than they were now, like 3D Max beat Dignitas, which is obviously huge.
Right.
But I'm hesitant to say, 3D Max is gonna beat, would they have beaten Fnatic had it been the same scenario? So I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket with 3D Max,
right,
but I would definitely keep an eye out for them, see if they get, if they just get better as it goes along.
Yeah, I definitely think that, maybe with them moving to a new team and this being their first big tournament with that team, maybe that was, kind of fuel to the fire to do a little better. Maybe it gave them that extra edge that you sometimes get when you play games, and you get more inspiration going into those games, and you get the outcome that 3D Max did. I certainly hope that 3D Max is able to keep this momentum and build off of it, because it would make for much more exciting games overall, because there's some games where you go to watch and it's just like, well, this is going to be a face roll. With more competitive teams, the more interesting the games and the more mind-boggling the tournaments become. Like this was one of the most unforeseen outcomes of any major tournament that we've really had this year. So with more competitive teams, more stuff like this can come, and it just makes for more fun Counter-Strike, in my opinion.
Right, like with the outcome of like 3D Max and like that team out of Russia,
right?
Or I think they're out of Russia. At least I know like World Edit and Flame
I'm pretty sure
Russian.
They are.
Like that team played, really, like they had a great showing. 3D Max is coming up. You have all these up and coming teams. Mouse Sports is up and coming. I'm still kind of waiting for like Overgaming to kind of make something happen. I'm waiting for iBuyPower to like make something happen on European soil.
Right.
Right. You have all these up and coming teams right now, so it's like, anyone could potentially just break through, right? Because like until January, Dignitas wasn't a big team. Until like midsummer, Fnatic wasn't even like they were out of the. People were like, oh, you know, Fnatic's done. They are has-beens. Titan, until they did the roster change, like, oh, they're done. They're washed up. They can't do anything else. Like, you know, things like that have been happening.
Right.
So like so much change has been going on. So it's super interesting right now to watch all these like up and coming teams just show up and just like powerhouse through other like huge name teams.
Yeah.
So like
James
just watching like crazy plays. Sorry, 1 second.
Alright, sorry about that, guys. We had a minor disruption. We had a friend of mine join into our event channel, so we're just going to go ahead and get right back to where we left off. Michael, continue what you were saying.
I want to take a quick moment to talk a little bit about Fnatic, because I think we had actually left off on like 3D Max.
Okay.
So I want to take a quick second to mention Fnatic and how they've been playing, because Fnatic has been like huge, and can't stress this enough. That Fnatic has been like huge. They come out, they perform, they beat people. That's what they do now. Ever since they dropped Schneider and Devil Walk and picked up Crimson Olafmeister from the X Team Global and LGB, they've just been crushing people like left and right. Just everyone. They beat like Virtus Pro. They beat Navi. They beat NiP obviously. They've beaten. They actually I think have beaten Titan and LDLC in recent tournaments. So they've just been crushing people, you know, left and right. Everyone's been losing to Fnatic. And so Fnatic's really been recently, if you go on any of the forums, like the Reddit threads for CSGO, if you go on HLTV, people are like, you know, Fnatic, are they the best team? Are they the best team? You know, like they've been beating everyone. And what I want to stress is that Titan ran over Fnatic.
Yeah.
Like Titan beat them 16-1 on Dust 2.
Yeah.
The only round Fnatic got was like an op base by JW, which by the way was like it blew my mind to watch
Absolutely
that happen.
sick.
Like it was beautiful. It was just like just like just so sick. Like I couldn't deal with it. But yeah, like Titan just ran them over. And I think what this is that so you have all these top teams. Fnatic, until they started like they won DreamHack Winter and then they kind of dropped off and people stopped paying attention as much because like Virtus Pro became the team to beat. Everyone was watching Virtus Pro, and then Dignitas became the team to beat and everyone was watching Dignitas, and now Fnatic became the team to beat and everyone was watching Fnatic. So like now that people are understanding their style, I think Fnatic's going to get a lot more resistance from follow-up tournaments. But more importantly, Titan just crushed people this tournament. So that's going to be attracting a lot of attention to Titan now, and now Titan is the team to beat. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with 2-0ing, you know, Fnatic, and then beating, you know, NiP to get out of the group stages, and then, you know, going on into the grand finals and then 2-0ing LDLC, I definitely think that this makes them currently right now the team to beat.
Especially after, you know, they lost to LDLC in the group stages on Mirage. And then they beat, you know, they lost 16-12 on Mirage.
Right.
And then they just destroyed LDLC in the finals on the same map.
Right.
It's like, you know, that's absolutely crazy to think about, especially when you have these teams that right now are like super stacked. Like LDLC beat NiP 16-3 on Inferno in the group stages.
Yeah.
They've been crushing people online. They beat 3D Max obviously 2-0, 16-8 and 16-12 on Cash and Dust 2 respectively. Like LDLC has been just putting up, you know, round like game after game just phenomenally.
Right.
And they have all these good players. Right, so you have in this head-to-head between two French teams, ironically playing in Sweden, you have like this crazy clash because there's also almost like this bad blood between NBK, the captain of the new LDLC squad.
Right.
It feels like he was kind of upset with existence when he left that team.
Right.
So you had this bad blood going on and all these other stuff. I'm sure they're all still friends, but you had all this like, you know, who is the best French team question? You know, which team made the right choice with who they got rid of and where they went. And really, like, Titan, honestly, this entire tournament, up until the final, LDLC hadn't dropped the map.
Yeah.
Which is, like...
They were dominating.
I mean, like, Titan only lost to LDLC. So it's kind of hard to say really much of anything about either team other than they were the best teams at this tournament.
Right.
They played the best. Like they were the teams to beat at this tournament, and that's all it really comes down to, is that people didn't adequately prepare for these teams, which are like, you know, like 3 weeks old or something.
Yeah.
So like the fact that they showed up and just crushed people was like, this is should be very concerning for most people, unless you're like a Titan or LDLC fan, in which case, you know, yeah, like
Yeah, it's
this is
fantastic.
gonna be great,
Right.
right? Like I'm a Shoxy fan. I love LDLC. I love the way Smith's ops. I love the way Kiyoshima plays. Like I've been a fan of Epsilon, and I've been a fan of Titan for most of their history.
Right.
Obviously, I still love the way like Kenny S ops and stuff like that. But right now, I'm really pulling for LDLC. Which so it's kind of heartbreaking to watch them lose in the finals, but
Right.
they were some excellent games. Well,
Yeah.
the second one at least. The first one was kind of a face roll.
Yeah, the second one was a very good game, and honestly, my opinion of it was I was incredibly shocked that Titan was able to beat LDLC because, you know, even before the whole fiasco of the roster changes of the French teams, LDLC was able to beat Titan consistently. Like they were the kryptonite to Titan. They always were able to seem to come on top, and that was mainly because of their in-game leader Happy, and you know Happy's still on LDLC. And so now with the roster changes, which we will talk about in a little bit, guys, if you don't know about those, with the roster changes, you know, it's like Happy knows how Titan plays. He knows how Existence calls games. He knows how they play, especially now even more so since they had the roster changes and some of his former teammates went over to Titan. So I was thinking, you know, Happy's going to have a field day being able to call his strats against this Titan roster, but that just wasn't the case, you know, especially for the first map. But on the second map, he did have a much better showing as far as strats went, but Titan were still able to pull it out in the end.
Right. I'd say right. So part of the reason for that is I'm not sure how good the communication is actually on these two teams.
Right.
Because they are only 3 weeks old, and if you watch the finals, there's some sick shots that people pull on like their own teammates.
Yeah.
Like there's an entire round where like Apex just like lights Kenny S through a door.
Yes.
It's like the sickest shot ever if it had not been, you know, dropping
His own
your
teammate
to
yeah.
10 and then getting shot in the face with an op.
Right.
So like they had a whole bunch of trouble like that.
Right.
And until recently, MBK actually was saying that he was calling the strats. And in case you guys don't know, usually at tournaments, the in-game leader sits in the middle. And at this past tournament, Shoxy was in the middle of the LDLC team, which is traditionally where you would sit an in-game leader because he can look to he doesn't have to look as far to the end to see, you know, who's where on the map. You he can look at all the screens pretty easily.
Right.
So that's generally where an in-game leader sits. So it's kind of a question as to if Happy is actually full-on calling, or if he's just if he's potentially just the overarching strategy caller, and they're letting Shox do mid-round calling.
Okay.
Because there have been a lot of games I've watched where it's they'll do something very Happy, right? Happy's really well known for just being super aggressive with his strategies. They'll dive into lower, they'll go up, they'll smoke mid on Dust 2, run to lower dark, and just catch you completely off guard. They'll have 3 people in B tunnels, and one person holding cat and one person holding mid, and just completely ignore long A. And he's willing to make these crazy plays like that. And Shox for the entirety of ever has been, you know, just a god tier player in all regards. He is the most well-rounded player. He plays phenomenally as a mid-round caller. He plays phenomenally as an op. He plays phenomenally as a rifle. He is the best pistol player in the game. So when you start looking at all these people, it's
who do you want?
Who is actually calling the strats, right? So it starts I feel like it might be, you know, maybe there's some contention between possibly egos on the team, you know, who's
That's
calling
true.
what, who's calling when. So I don't know how well LDLC is actually gelling together right now to do team plays, but at the very least they weren't shooting each other, which is a step above what Titan was doing in the finals on all of Cash.
Yeah, I think
there was
what 5
so
or
many
6
rounds.
instances where teammates shot each other, and
or they would nade each other, all sorts of nonsense.
Yeah, I mean it was there were too many instances, and you know, luckily for them, other than just one round, it didn't really hurt them at all. But you know, it could have been much worse for them. But all I know is with LDLC having this, situation where they have NBK, they have Shoxy, and they have Happy, all people that are very experienced when it comes to shot calling, and they're very able at that position. I think it's a very good problem for that team to have because, like you said, they are a very new team, so they still have a lot of communication stuff to work out. And I feel like once they get that down, I feel like LDLC could just absolutely become a terror for anybody in their way.
Right. So the thing I will say about LDLC is I consider them to be very similar to NIP. In my opinion, there are really two types of teams. There's a team that acts basically like a freight train, which is like Fnatic and Virtus Pro, and now Titan, really, in my opinion, is going to be like, once they get this momentum going, they just, you can't stop it. They just like start hitting shots and they just run you over. Right. And LDLC, on the other hand, is like NIP, where it's like they're always very, very solid. Like, no matter what side you put them on, they're just going to be like, they're going to be posting rounds. Every single round is going to be terrifying. They have Kiyoshima, who posted, I think, possibly the best early tournament appearance I've ever seen. And, I think it was Gfinity, who was like, he finished like 1.84 or some crap.
Yeah,
out of
it
group
was
stages, like
absolutely incredible.
Insane.
Yeah.
Like, he was like dropping like 30 on teams every single game or something.
Right.
Shox is obviously like unreal.
Shox is a god.
Literally, he just like in the finals, it was like 1-on-2 or something. He just walks up, just like one clicks Kaylee through a smoke, and then proceeds to just like spray down Kenny S as he tries to approach the site, and just like his game sense is just unreal.
Yeah.
So they're a very scary team to be thinking about. But right now, what I would say is that they don't have a whole lot of entry potential onto necessarily sites.
Okay.
Because Smith Z is a very, very passive opper.
Right.
Like, Smith Z is a very good defensive player. Like, if you put him on anywhere on a map, on any map, CT side, and give him an op, he will absolutely shut down that one area of the map. But as far as him diving in for getting opening picks, like players like Kenny S and JW and Kaylee, are really known for doing, he's really not that good at that. So we've seen Shoxy doing that for the team.
Right.
And I'm not sure how good really Shoxy is that, even though Shoxy's, like amazing with everything.
Yeah.
But like right now their best entries are like NBK and Kiyoshima, and Shox is playing what I call the superstar role, which is like the follow-up entry onto a site.
Mm-hmm.
It's where you put your best player when like shit hits the fan, they can just clean up the site.
Yeah.
That's really my opinion where you throw your best players. Third place, your entry fragger is your fast aimer with maybe doesn't have as good game sense, but like Shox got the game sense. He knows how to clean up someone's mess.
Yeah.
So like it's I don't know how they're gonna organize their team right now, but it's a very scary team on paper.
Yeah.
If they can get their team up to snuff, this all of a sudden becomes like LDLC becomes the elephant in the room that people have to deal with, because they start becoming pretty much the mirror version of NIP, but in France, because they have what I consider to be two of the top French players. Obviously Shoxy, in my opinion, is pretty much number one.
Yeah.
If Kiyoshima can step it up and give his performance like he did at G3 at every single tournament, or at least like even like half of that, you're looking at someone who is like the second best rifle in France, who is a competitor to players like Apex from Titan, who's a competitor to players even really like Kenny S or Haley, who are also excellent players. You have someone who can compete with any rifle in the world, right? Like Kiyoshima and Shoxy on one team, followed up by an extremely aggressive leader who's willing to make calls in the form of Happy, and then like the famous entry fragger for like NBK, and then they have a defensive opper. The really big difference here is that I think Smiths is like, in recent times, has been stepping it up way more than I would consider Flaren to have stepped it up.
Yeah.
But Smiths has been like going just frag crazy for the past like 3 months or something, even on Titan.
Yeah.
So he's playing really well. So if LDLC gets it together, I feel like if they can learn to play together and play as a team, and if they can bring their A game like more consistently, they start becoming a really, really scary team.
Yeah, I'd have to definitely agree with you. With once again, you go back to the fact that the new French teams, LDLC, Titan, and Epsilon, they're all very new. Like not even quite a month old yet, so they still have a lot of stuff to work out. I feel like once they work that out, that playing anybody, any one of those three teams is it's going to be a difficult match. Now, do you think with the recent emergence of these French teams, do you think that they're going to be able to begin competing with Sweden as far as how great their teams are? Like do you think that French are finally going to be able to I guess knock off the top country in the world at in Counter-Strike?
To be perfectly honest, France has always been really good at Counter-Strike. Like throughout all of CSS, the best teams really were like they were usually the French teams. Like the Very Games team was usually top team, especially towards the end. So they've been very, very good. Even during back towards 1.6, they were good teams. Whether or not they're gonna, like all of a sudden France is gonna become the powerhouse nation of CS, I don't personally think so. Simply because if you've never actually looked at tournament holdouts in like Sweden for things, they just fill stadiums for CS, just for CS. People in Sweden love CS. They're huge into it. It's like CS is to Sweden what StarCraft really was to Korea.
Right.
And it's like South Korea, and now really becoming, like that's becoming LoL. So you can draw a comparison between Korea and LoL and like Sweden and Counter-Strike.
Yeah, like, did you see the stands at DreamHack Stockholm? Like when the grand final started, like they were packed, absolutely packed. And then once both LDLC and Titan got in, it was both French teams. Because Fnatic was the only Swedish team allowed. Yeah, it was just like, and by the end, I think there was like, I counted like 20 people in the stands, when Titan finally clinched its victory.
Well, there's also the fact that it was like 1 or 2 in the morning.
It was like a 3.5 hour delay.
It's pretty late.
Right. Yeah. It was pretty late. I can't really blame them for wanting to get out of there.
So.
But I want to move on to the roster changes that happened between all the French teams, and these happened. What was it like within like 48 hours of Cologne? Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that. It was like real fast. It all like all of a sudden over the course of like one day, everything changed in the CS world, really.
Yeah.
Because you had this team LDLC that had done just phenomenally at Cologne. They had made top 4. They're guaranteed back into the next DSL. Like they're a qualified team. Epsilon was a qualified team. So you had 2 qualified teams, and Titan went out in groups.
Yeah.
So it was like, why would anyone from Epsilon or Titan want to change?
Yeah.
And really, really what it comes down to is it feels like there were some underlying tensions with a lot of the teams. Like, I remember FXO knifes Faflaren during ESL Cologne, and Shoxy got really, like, just kind of was, like, not having it from him. It was really kind of strange, honestly, but, Shoxy kind of apparently did not like FXO. I don't have anything else to back it up with, but he was not a fan of FXO, at least knifing Faflaren on Cobblestone when he did it. So it felt like there were some underlying tensions, and if you ask a lot around on the forums, people will be like, FXO he's always been good, but people don't really like his personality, sort of like the way Delpan or Michaelele,
right,
the former XM, have been known for. So like it felt like maybe there were some underlying tensions there between some of the players, and obviously Shoxy was good friends with a lot of his Very Games, old ex-Very Games teammates and ex-Titan teammates.
Right.
Because the only reason he left Titan was because he didn't like the gaming house.
Right.
For Titan, it was a foregone conclusion that something had to change, because they had gone out 3 majors in a row in groups.
Yeah.
They had lost every single time. So
they were destined to make a change. Yeah.
Right. They had to change, and apparently the drops, the suggested drops were Scream and Smiths. And MBK said, "I don't want that. I think Existence needs to leave." Or at least according to the rumor, he said Existence should be the one to go, and talk to Kenny S about it. Kenny S didn't want to get in trouble backstabbing with having problems with teammates again, because he actually had problems with I think it was Apex and Kaylee and some other people before.
Right.
About a similar type thing where they wanted someone out of the team and he refused to do it, and he had gotten into trouble there. So he was like, I'm gonna back existence here. I'm not gonna betray my friend or anything like that. So yeah, Kenny is a super stand-up guy. But what happens is MBK leaves. He and Smiths apparently were in talks with Shoxy or something. I don't know, and they made a team. So it left just Kenny S in existence on Titan.
Right.
And at that point, I'm pretty sure is when Titan swoops into LDLC's main office and is like, "Hey, what's up, Kaylee, Maniac, and Apex?
Yeah.
You guys want some free money?"
Right.
And just kind of drag them into the house,
Right.
right? So like, so now it's they've taken 3 LDLC players and put them on Titan. So now three huge players, which was Kenny S, Apex, and Kaylee, really are like now on Titan. So now Titan's gotten like a huge change in even overall team composition.
Right.
Because Apex is like a hyper accurate rifler.
Yeah.
He plays in a very similar way to players like Shoxy and Get Right and Forrest, as opposed to Scream, who plays really, really specifically looking for those sweet aim, those aim shots.
Yeah.
He's the guy who he'll drop a 90% headshot ratio on a map. But Apex honestly will bring in more kills. He is, in my opinion, a better player.
Right.
Kaylee is obviously a top opper. He carried the crap out of his team up into the semifinals, or the semifinals of ESL Cologne.
Right.
Kaylee has been playing phenomenally. Happy was obviously a great in-game leader, and now he was left teamless, so I guess he was, he's the one guy. Shoxy's crew needed a 5th, so they took in Happy.
Right.
So now that leaves, the remnants, which happens to be 5 players, because, you break up 2 teams, you get 5 players left.
Right.
That's just kind of how it works with math. So
Right.
you have the leftover people, which are, Scream, FXO, GMX, Super Fighter, and Uzi making a team. And I'm not sure if at this point if Super Fighter's been replaced by LPM or not, who is the Pont Magnifique. I apologize to anyone who's French, who I just totally butchered that for. That was I can't speak French. I'm sorry, guys. I can't
Sounded
speak
good
French.
to me, man.
Never learned it. But yeah, so these 3 new teams were kind of nebulous, except for obviously Titan, who is Kenny S, Existence, Maniac, Kaylee, and Apex.
Right.
Who had a team. Within a week, the other team of MBK, Smithsy, Happy, Shox, and Kiyoshima had gotten the team named Mercenary.
Okay.
And apparently, I'm not sure if it was because they kept Happy or LDLC just wanted another team or whatnot, but LDLC came to them and was like, hey guys, we want a CSGO team. And they were, I guess they were all on board for it.
Yeah.
So now they're on LDLC.
Right.
I can understand why Epsilon would keep their team, because really they only lost 2 players.
Right.
They had FXO, GMX, and SF. So they changed those guys out they added in the 2 remaining people of Scream and Uzi. So now we have these 3 completely different teams. Because Epsilon's strat caller was Shoxy until he left.
Right.
Titan lost more than half their team. And literally the last one, LDLC, is a composition of 2 separate teams, or all 3 teams really in right about equal parts. So at this point we have 3 completely different teams for all the French scene, and these are the best French teams.
Right.
It's also been further complicated, who is the best, because as long as on LDLC as long as Maniac and Uzi were on LDLC, neither one of them were really performing that well. Maniac and Uzi, in my opinion, were they were kind of mediocre players.
Yeah.
Until they got to their new team, and all of a sudden, Maniac is dropping 25
they
kills
stepped
on
up
people
huge
and clutching it
in the grand finals.
It's unreal.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen Uzi's play recently, but it's a world of difference. He all of a sudden is I think he's getting to be as good as I don't want to say as good as everyone else, but the level of skill on these French teams is so concentrated
Right.
that I think Uzi might actually be the 2nd best player on Epsilon now.
Dang.
Scream even I don't know what happened. If it was just he couldn't take he needed a change in his life,
Right.
but he's been a completely different person. He's going back to Titan or Very Games circa end of 2013, right?
Right.
So all of these players have just stepped up into huge. MBK would 30 bomb Titan in the last game. These players have been doing unreal good.
Right.
ever since they switched it up.
Yeah.
So like these teams are all very volatile.
Yeah, I think it has to do with,
So,
maybe like some like maybe countryman pride, because you have all these switches, and like you said, like maybe there's some bad blood between a couple people or two, so maybe they're kind of fighting for pride. And it used to just really be Titan who stood atop the best team in France. You had LDLC, which like I said earlier, was their kryptonite. But as far as a international scale, Titan was always the best. LDLC wasn't able to consistently perform well against other top ranked teams, or as Titan was. And so now you have all these roster changes, and so now it's like everybody has a chance to be that number one French team. And so it's kind of like that extra kick in the ass that they needed in order to really like pick up their game. And it's become so exciting. Like, I loved Titan before their changes, and when they split up, I was like, no, you got to be kidding me. Like Titan is no more. But then all these changes come in, and then you see a couple games, and now it's like, man, it's like Titan is here, LDLC is here, Epsilon's not too far behind them. Like, it's like I'm really enjoying the scene of Counter-Strike, in which it is developing, and these teams just kind of coming up, and everybody becoming more competitive. It's a lot of fun, and I think it's really good for the fan base, and it's really good for the game as well. But I want to go ahead and move on, Michael, to the next segment, probably the segment that most people have been waiting for, which is where we go ahead and discuss our predictions for the upcoming games on CSGO Lounge, and kind of give some insight onto like what the score may be, what we think how good the teams are, and like where they are at currently. And so we're just gonna stick with the Face It games that are coming up tomorrow for the Face It EU. So first off, we have Hellraisers versus Virtus Pro.
Right. So real quick, what I want to do is let's just go through the 3 games, and I want to list out who I think is going to win. I want you to list out who you think is going to win.
That's perfect.
Right. Let's
that
see.
works.
So let's see what's going on. Right. So we have Hellraisers versus Virtus Pro versus NIP, and LDLC versus Fnatic. Right.
Right.
So my predictions are going to be Virtus Pro, Fnatic.
Okay. Give me percentages. I want percentages out of you, because that's what people really like. Like
percentages.
Yeah, I want percentages.
Ooh.
Give me percentages, because this is where it gets exciting. Is where you start putting down percentages.
So, what I'm going to say is that Hellraisers right now, for the past couple months, they haven't been performing anywhere near what the level of we had come to expect from Hellraisers.
Right.
Right. Like back in 2013, they took all the top fraggers of 2 teams, which was at the time Virtus Pro, and I'm blanking on the other team, but it was 2 teams. They put them together, made Astana Dragons.
Right.
I think it might have been Navi. It was like Virtus Pro and Navi made Astana Dragons.
That's right. That's
and
correct.
they were the team that was meant to beat NIP, and
Right.
then they didn't beat NIP.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, what's the point of this now? And as it went on, like they got dropped from Astana Dragons, or they dropped the name Astana Dragons or something like that, and got picked up by Hellraisers.
Right.
And they were doing okay, and now it's really like they haven't been doing so hot lately. So they actually ended up dropping Kutcher, or Kutcher retired or something, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And they picked up a guy named Simple, and it looks like Simple is now like, is he the kick in the pants that Hellraisers need to get over the top? Virtus Pro people, I think, right now are like, Virtus Pro's on the downslope, Virtus Pro's going out. I'm gonna have to completely disagree with that after watching Virtus Pro play Titan. And I think it was actually another Face game recently. But yeah, so like Virtus Pro was like, they were on point. I think they beat Titan on cash. Like that's nothing to sneeze at, right?
Right.
Beating Titan on cash is not anything to joke about. Virtus Pro was playing really well.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that if Virtus Pro shows up, if like 2 of their players show up, they're gonna just destroy Hellraisers.
Right.
Like if any of the 2 players show up, right? If like Bialy and Taz show up, like all of a sudden these like positions that people are playing, like each site just becomes untenable. You can't break in. Like how do you beat players who play like Virtus Pro does when they're on a roll.
Right.
Like, how do you beat Snacks? Snacks might as well have like wall hacks. He just shoots you through the smoke.
Yeah.
He doesn't care.
Right.
Like Bialy has had the smartest, like Bialy and Snacks have had the smartest play pretty much ever. Taz is, when he's on point, just like basically just spinning around, flick shotting everyone out of existence.
Right.
Like he just solo holds a site, or you could Taz makes it cost 3 people to get into a site.
Yeah.
Neo is obviously Neo. Like when he shows up, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Like. Is there really anything more to say about it?
They're a very emotional team, like very momentum based team, as you guys may have saw when they won. What was the major tournament? It was what, ESL. Won Katowice. Yeah, when they won, like it was just like the emotion coming out of them was just intense. Like just watching it on my computer screen, I was inspired to go play Counter-Strike, and I was pumped.
They want to win, and the next ESL is going to be in Poland again. It's not going to be Katowice, but they've announced that it's going to be in Poland again.
Right.
So they want this. They want to win. They want to get better. So they're getting good for that tournament. And obviously Pasha is Pasha. He was for the first half of this year, he was like top 5 players in the world. Yeah. And he's still playing really well. It's Pasha. Like if they show up, Hellraisers is going to get, crushed, right? Uh-huh. I would probably say this is like a 60-40, maybe even 65-35 game. Okay. I think, like VP is just going to, if they show up, they're going to crush them. Right. Conversely, with Nip in Virtus Pro, Nip has had a lot of trouble with VP in the past, because Nip is very good at, like, doing these kind of calm, collected plays every single round, based on, like, just basically just information. Like Exist will just be like, yeah, force it now because Forrest can buy a gun, and they'll just do things and win rounds that they should never win. Right. But they won't ever just, like train someone. Right. Like Virtus Pro is known as the Virtus Plow for a reason. Right. Right. Like when they get going, and Nip has a really hard time apparently stopping this because they've had a hard time in the past. Honestly, with the way that Get Right actually performed today against Epsilon, if that shows up, in the next game, which is, it could be a world of difference. It could be even like, it could be the same. It could be, completely different. Right. But if it goes on the way it's going on right now, it looks like it's going to be a repeat game of when they played at ESEA LAN in Dallas, where at first, Get Right went like 1-13 against some other American team. I don't remember what it was. It was like, I think it might have been Complexity. He went 1-13 against them. Right. And like he was just playing really poorly. Granted, I think he was like sick and didn't have much sleep or something. But then they played, the sleep deprived Virtus Pro, and they got destroyed. Right. So I think right now, it's a better bet to go on with Virtus Pro, probably like 55-45. Right. So, like, I wouldn't bet anything huge here. And for reference, I would never bet anything huge on a team that's obviously going to win. Yeah. Right? You don't want to throw away skins for no reason, guys. Right. Don't do that. Like, you want to bet reasonably on teams that look like they have a good chance of upsets. Right. Yeah, that's how I got all my skins. I think, like... So, right now... Most of the skins I use are from CSGO Lounge, and it was all from stuff like... It was like 55-45, like, close, like, good returns... And I was able to, my team that I bet on was able to pull ahead. So don't do any large, crazy bets on teams that aren't likely to win or on teams that are, like, heavily favored. Right. Like, right now, the only game I would be really saying, you should go bet, the games I would say are Virtus Pro. Bet on Virtus Pro for Virtus Pro versus Nip. Because right now it's a 63-37. Yeah. Like, that's crazy odds for this. This is like really dumb. Yeah. This is the type of game where people throw their Asimovs down and then they just like lose them. It's like, oh, what happened? You bet on a dumb game. Right. Right. Like, go bet on Virtus Pro. I would advise, don't bet anything you're not willing to lose. But a small to medium bet on Virtus Pro isn't like crazy here. Right. Because if they win, you get a huge payoff. Yeah. If they lose, you didn't lose anything you cared about anyways. Right. Right. So, like, 37-63 is not VP versus Nip odds, guys. What do you think the odds should be? Honestly, like I said, probably 55 in favor of Virtus Pro. Okay. Probably 55-45. Okay. But right now, the odds are so tilted towards Nip, and this happens all the time with Nip. Like, I think there was a game where Nip was like 80-20 over Astana Dragons. Yeah. And Assault Dragons won, and people are like, "Oh, what happened?"
Right.
You bet on a team, like you bet on a game that had huge upset potential and lost it. That's what happened.
Yeah, I saw some
Right?
guy
So, like, this game has
post
huge upset potential.
on. I saw a guy post on Reddit how actually after that very game, I remember he had like a $450 return on skins, and he got like 3 Op Asimovs and then like a bunch of other skins. I mean, just completely just banked out, and you know, from people being stupid and betting big time guns on a game that they probably shouldn't have. But what are your thoughts on LDLC and Fnatic?
So right now, I'm thinking that LDLC is probably gonna get, like, I don't want to say stumped, but they're probably going to lose to Fnatic.
Okay.
I would say this game is going to go like 16-10, 16-12 in favor of Fnatic.
Right.
Simply based on been going on with Fnatic and what's been going on with LDLC. LDLC has been playing well. Fnatic has been playing, just better. Fnatic looks like they're going to win. Right now, the odds are 67-33 on CSGO Lounge.
Right.
Which means I advise a small bet on LDLC.
Okay.
The reasoning behind this is that the actual odds for this game are right around probably like 60-40. So you have a decent chance of LDLC upsetting Fnatic. LDLC are the semi-finalists to DreamHack Stockholm.
Yeah.
Right? They showed up. They played well. They
Yeah.
16-3 nip.
Yeah.
Like you don't get to the finals without playing well somehow.
Right.
Right? Even if the only team they played afterwards was 3D Max, like they still beat Titan to get to the first seed, right?
Right.
So if LDLC shows up, and if especially if Shoxy's on point, Fnatic is going to get dumpstered, right?
Yeah.
If Shoxy shows up tonight, which is kind of a crapshoot all the time, honestly, if he shows up in form though, like this is the guy that led Epsilon to a 16-0 over Hellraisers.
Yeah.
In DreamHack Valencia.
Mm-hmm.
If Shoxy shows up, if Kiyoshima shows up, like if Smiths just plays like Smiths, then we're all of a sudden pretty good.
Right.
So I would advise a small bet on LDLC.
Yeah. All right.
So what are your thoughts?
My belief is I think Virtus Pro is going to very easily handle Hellraisers. I don't really think there's too much of a contest there. I would probably go with 60. I'd go with 65-35 is what I believe what the win to loss ratio in favor of Virtus Pro would be. And versus NiP, I think Virtus Pro is able to take this. I actually read a post from Get Right that said recently we give away a lot of easy rounds. So that's not something very encouraging to hear from, one of the best players in the world, and that has been over the past, 2 years or so, how his team gives up easy rounds and just throws them away. And the thing is like I said, with Virtus Pro being so emotional, like those type of rounds that they're able to get from you where they like oh crap, like we're gonna lose this round, and they like snatch it and they win that round, that's gonna just fuel the freight train that they are. Right. So I feel like with the way NiP is playing currently, with them going out in groups, and that like mindset, after going out in groups, it's got to have some mental wear on them, and it may still be in the back of their minds at this point. So I think Virtus Pro is going to win this game. I would say I'd probably put it the exact same percentage as used. I would say 55-45 because NiP is still NiP. Like you have to respect that name, but Virtus Pro can very easily still run away with this thing. But as far as LDLC and Fnatic go, my thing is I try to think about the mindset that teams have going into games. And you have LDLC, they're so close to winning the finals. They got there, they couldn't show up the first game, they went into overtime the second game. It was just, they came so close, and maybe you're thinking like, man, like I'm so close, and like they just kind of have that vengeance that they want to go back out there and they want to win. But at the same time, I think it's like, man, like we were so close, and it's like it's such an emotional game, and they had such a long delay that it's very wearing on their bodies, mentally and physically, just being up as late as they were. Because like you said, it was the games went into like 1 a.m. over in Stockholm. Yeah. And Fnatic, who lost to LDLC in the semifinals, is like, we want to prove to these people that we can play with them. And so I think for that, I'm going to give the edge to Fnatic. I would have to say 65-35. Fnatic, so it's not too much off what it is right now. But I like Fnatic the way they're playing right now. And I feel like with the loss and the kind of the way that things went down at Stockholm, LDLC may have a kind of like a rougher time bouncing back, whereas Fnatic is going to come out, and they're going to come out, you know, strong.
Right.
But guys,
I would probably have to agree with that.
Yeah, I think these are going to be some exciting games. I can't wait because, you know, this is face it, first year that they're doing LANs.
This is going to be super exciting.
It's a lot on the line. You know, LANs are always a lot of fun. So I certainly hope you guys tune in to watch those games. But guys, we're all out of time for this episode of Bot Chatter. I'm signing off for my friend Michael and Cambot. I thank you all so much for watching. And as always, I will see you in the next video.